Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are really getting into it today with a stack.
Yeah, looking at Hollywood, free speech, and, well, some pretty strong feelings about double standard.
That's putting it mildly. One source uses the word fury, which, tells you something.
Definitely. It's not just abstract debate. We're talking about the return of a specific historical committee.
Right. One with deep roots in, let's say, some foundational trauma for the entertainment.
Exactly. And the controversy is all about why now. What's the real motive behind bringing it?
Okay, let's frame this up. The main subject is the very high profile of the Committee for the First Amendment, CFA.
Hundreds of celebrities involved. Big names.
And their stated mission is, straightforward, defending constitutional rights, free speech.
But, and this is the core of the sources we've got, the argument is that it's not quite so, maybe more self-preservation.
That's the act, yeah. So for you listening, our mission here is really threefold, isn't it?
I think so. First, we absolutely need to understand the original CFA. Go back to McCarthy, understand the fear back then.
The real stakes.
The real stakes, yes. Second, we have to unpack this hypocrisy claim from the source material. This idea that suddenly free speech matters now because it might affect.
After the source claims they were silent or even supportive when others faced consequences.
Right. And third, we need to spend some real time on this distinction the source makes, which is critical.
Between free speech, like First Amendment government stuff, and what they call freedom of consequence.
Exactly. Professional accountability, market forces, private decision. Very different things, according to this view.
Okay, so here's the hook, the thing that really grabs this committee, born to fight actual government persecution back in the day.
Really dark time.
Is now being revived, the source argues, by the very people who are maybe cheering on the silencing of others.
Or at least, look the other way. So the source sees it as flipping the script. The powerful using a shield meant for the persecuted, but using it for themselves.
Transforming them from defenders into, the newly concerned powerful.
That's the argument we need to explore.
Okay, that sets it up perfect. Let's dive into the relaunch itself. The who, the what, the when.
So the sources are clear. It happened just recently on a Wednesday, and it wasn't subtle.
No, definitely not. Over 550 celebrities. That number alone is staggering.
It really is. Relaunching the Committee for the First Amendment, the CFA, a coordinated, very public move.
You don't get 550 plus major names together quietly. This was meant to make noise.
Absolutely. And the source material really emphasizes who these people are. We should probably touch on that just to show the scale.
Yeah, the breadth of it is key, isn't it? It shows who holds the power here.
It does. You've got major filmmakers.
Yeah.
People who really shape what we watch.
Like who? Give us some examples from the...
Okay, so Spike Lee, Barry Jenkins, J.J. Abrams, Patty Jenkins too, Aaron Sorkin, Judd Apatow. I mean, these are huge creative forces.
Absolutely. Defining modern film. But it wasn't just directors, right? The list goes way beyond that.
Oh, yeah, way beyond. It spills right over into, household names, actors, musicians, comedians.
Like who else?
Well, you've got Quinta Brunson, creator of Abbott Elementary.
Yeah.
You've got legends like Barbra Streisand.
Yeah, Streisand too. Okay.
And then huge music stars, John Legend, Janelle Monáe, Gracie Abrams, Billie Eilish even.
So established icons and the sort of current zeitgeist figures.
Exactly. It's a real cross-section. Old guard, new guard, all seemingly on the same page for this.
And the list keeps going, right? The sources mentioned a lot more actors.
They did. People like Tiffany Haddish, Nikki Glaser, Mark Ruffalo, Kerry Washington, Pedro Pascal.
Okay, so major dramatic actors, comedians.
Natalie Portman, Viola Davis, Ben Stiller, Fran Drescher even, head of the Actors Union, SAG-AFTRA.
Right, that's significant too. When you see that list, it's basically modern Hollywood saying, we stand together on this.
It's undeniably a massive chunk of the industry's cultural and, frankly, economic power. Billions in revenue, millions of followers. They are the established in many ways.
So with all that clout, what's the specific message? What's the threat they say they're facing that warrants bringing back a McCarthy era?
Well, the letter they put out, according to the sources, is about standing up in defense of our constitutional right. Pretty broad.
Okay, but they must specify the threat more than that.
They do. They claim the federal government is, and this is their phrase, once again engaged in a coordinated campaign to silence critics.
Once again, there's that historical echo right there. They're explicitly linking today to the 40s and 50s.
Absolutely deliberate linkage. And they say this campaign isn't just in entertainment.
Where else?
They list government itself, the media, the judiciary, academia, and of course the entertainment. It's a sweeping claim of systemic pressure.
Wow. Okay, so they're basically framing it as a kind of modern, widespread witch hunt led by the government.
That seems to be the implication, which is precisely why we need to understand the original context. What was that first CFA actually fighting against?
Exactly. Let's pivot to that history now, because the gravity of the original fight is crucial for understanding the source's critique of this relay.
Yeah, the original CFA wasn't, formed lightly. It came out of a period the sources call a dark time.
The McCarthy era. We hear the term, but what did that actually mean for people in Hollywood back then?
It meant real fear. The government, specifically the House Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC, was actively investigating people.
Investigating for what? Just political beliefs?
Essentially, yes. For being communists or communist sympathizers, or sometimes just knowing someone who might be. It was about political thought and association.
And HUAC wasn't just asking questions, right? It had teeth.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They held hearings, they issued subpoenas. You could be forced to testify before Congress.
And what happened if you testified, or if you didn't?
Well, they often pressured people to name names to identify others they suspected. If you refused to answer or refused to name, you could face contempt of Congress charge.
Meaning jail time. Fine.
Yes, potentially. But the bigger, more immediate weapon was the blacklist.
Ah, the infamous Hollywood blacklist.
Exactly. Even if you weren't jailed, just being named or refusing to cooperate often meant the studios wouldn't touch you. You became unemployable overnight. Careers destroyed.
So direct government pressure leading to total professional annihilation.
That's it. And that's why the first CFA was formed back in the 1940s, to fight that, to defend artists against that kind of government persecution.
And it had some serious figures involved back then, too.
It did. The sources mention Henry Fonda specifically, a major star standing up against government overreach. It highlights the mission, protecting individuals from state power, crushing their livelihoods over politics.
Okay, so that's the noble origin story. Now, the source commentary we looked at throws a wrench in that lineage, doesn't it, with Walt?
Right. The source brings up Disney as a kind of counter. They stated very bluntly, Walt Disney hated communists.
Hated them to the point of?
Actively working with the government investigator, trying to, as the source puts it, get them out of his company.
Why? Just ideology.
Ideology played a huge part, but the source links it specifically to unionization efforts at Disney. He apparently saw the unions as a communist front, trying to undermine his control.
So while Henry Fonda and the CFA were defending people from HUAC, Disney was effectively helping HUAC.
That's the contrast the source draws. Disney testifying for the committee, supporting the purge, putting him ideologically opposite the original CFA's mission.
Okay, that's a stark historical division, and the source connects this right up to the present day through the Fonda family.
Yes, and this is where the source gets quite pointed rhetorically. They note Henry Fonda's daughter, Jane Fonda, is part of this new CFA relaunch.
Okay, so a Fonda is involved again.
But the source repeatedly uses the nickname Hanoi Jane when referring to her.
Which is obviously a very loaded political term stemming from her Vietnam War act.
Extremely loaded. And the implication the source seems to be making is, well, it's complex. They're framing her current activism, and by extension the new CFAs, as representing the very kind of, let's say, leftist ideology that people like Walt Disney fought against back in the day.
Wow. So the source is suggesting that the people using the shield now are the ideological descendants of those the shield wasn't originally meant for, maybe even those seen as the threat back.
That seems to be the underlying, quite provocative argument, that reviving this specific committee with this group of people isn't about defending universal free speech against government tyranny,
but about protecting a particular modern political faction within Hollywood.
That's the setup.
Yeah.
And it directly leads into their main charge, hypocrisy. Why now? What triggered this sudden urgent need for constitutional defense?
Right. This brings us squarely into the source's central critique.
Yeah, the source commentary doesn't hold back here. There's a palpable sense of, well, anger.
Fury, as they put it.
Fury, yes. And the core argument is pretty simple. All these celebrities suddenly care deeply about free speech.
The moment they think the negative consequences might.
Exactly. The source argues they were perfectly fine, maybe even happy, when others were facing the music.
This plebs versus celebrities divide, as the source frames it. Who do they claim was silenced while Hollywood shrugged?
They give specific examples. They talk about ordinary people, normies, your anti-vax uncles,
Meaning people outside the Hollywood bubble, often with conservative or non.
Precisely. People questioning vaccine mandates or election results, things like that. The source claims these people were systematically deplatformed, shadow banned, accounts deleted.
Mostly on social media platforms, right? Which is technically private companies, not government-censored First Amendment.
That's a key distinction, yeah. But the source argues it was politically motivated silence, enabled or encouraged by the prevailing climate under the Biden administration, and that Hollywood either ignored it or cheered it on because they didn't like the views being expressed.
So the argument is it wasn't government censorship, but it was silence, and the celebrities were okay with it.
That's the claim. Silence or even approval when it happened to people with the wrong opinion.
Did the source mention any examples from within the industry itself? People who faced consequences before current mobilization?
Oh, yeah. Two very big names come up repeated. Roseanne Barr and Gina Carano.
Right. Both fired from major gigs after a controversial statement.
Exactly. Roseanne for that tweet, Carano for her social media post, particularly the one comparing political division to the Holocaust era.
And the source's point is
that the industry, including many of the people now signing this CFA letter, were perfectly fine with those firing. The attitude, according to the source, was essentially good riddance. They said bad things, they faced the consequences. They were definitely silenced, the source says, but it was seen as justified.
So consequences were acceptable when applied to them, but now?
Now, the source argues when consequences loom for people within the currently powerful faction, suddenly it's a constitutional crisis. They even point to the alleged silence or cheering when a sitting President Trump was removed from social media platforms.
Okay, so that's the backdrop of alleged hypocrisy. What specific event does the source claim actually triggered the CFA relaunch? What was the immediate catalyst?
They point directly to what they call the Jimmy Kimmel situation.
Kimmel, what happened there, according to
the source says Kimmel said something misleading or stupid on his show related to a political topic, and afterwards some local affiliate stations, Sinclair and Nexstar were mentioned, pulled his show temporarily.
Okay, and how did the media report that?
This is where the source gets really critical. They claim the media narrative kept bringing up the F, implying potential government involvement or censorship.
But the source disagrees with that interpretation.
Strongly. They argue the companies themselves, the affiliates, stated it was purely a business decision. The source goes further, claiming these stations were already unhappy with Kimmel, that he was problematic, ratings were down, using their blunt language again, in the shitter, and they were basically looking for a reason to push back or maybe even drop him.
So the source sees it not as a free speech issue, but as a business market forces and ratings at play.
Entirely. They frame it as a minor, short-lived hiccup based on business reality, not some fundamental constitutional threat.
And they contrast this with the react.
Massively. They ridicule the idea that this event would prompt Jane Fonda to call it the most frightening moment of my life. The source is basically asking, really, being off-air briefly in a few markets compares to the actual government persecution under HUAC. It frames the CFA relaunch as a massive overreaction driven by self-interest.
This alleged overreact, comparing a business consequence to a historical witch hunt, seems to be the linchpin of their hypocrisy argument.
It really is. And it leads directly into that core philosophical distinction they keep hammering home.
Okay, this is crucial. Let's really unpack this distinction because it's the foundation of the entire critique in the source.
Absolutely. The hosts of the commentary video, they actually state their own view first. They say, look, people should be allowed to say dumb shit, basically.
Unless it's illegal, like threats or incitement.
Right, unless you're breaking the law. But, and this is the key phrase they repeat over and over, it's only free speech. It's not freedom of consequence.
Okay, explain that distinction as the source sees it. Free speech protects you from
the government. The First Amendment stops the government from shutting you up, arresting you for your opinions, censoring you directly.
But it doesn't stop
your boss from firing you if you say something offensive that violates company policy. It doesn't stop a platform like Twitter or Facebook from banning. It doesn't stop customers from boycotting your product or viewers from changing the channel. Those are consequences imposed by private actors or the market.
So applying that logic, when Roseanne Barr got fired by ABC or Gina Carano by Disney Lucasfilm,
according to the source, that was private companies deciding they didn't want to be associated with that speech or the backlash it caused. Yeah. It was a business decision, perfectly legal, even if you disagreed with it.
And the source argues the industry largely accepted that rationale back then, the idea that they don't have to employ you.
Yes, that was the line often used. The source claims freedom of speech doesn't guarantee you a specific platform or job, especially a high profile. You say something the employer deems damaging, they can act. That was okay then.
But the alleged double standard kicks in when?
When the same principle of consequence potentially applies to someone like Kimmel or threatens the broader group now signing the CFA letter, suddenly the source argues it's not seen as a business decision anymore.
Now it's framed as a violation of constitutional rights.
That's the core accusation. They're demanding First Amendment protection from private sector consequences, from market reactions, from contractual issues. The source basically says they're confusing apples and oranges, or maybe doing it intentionally to shield themselves.
It's like claiming freedom of speech means a newspaper has to publish your letter to the editor, which is
exactly. Or that a TV network has to keep your show on the air regardless of ratings or advertiser concern. The source sees the CFA's move as demanding immunity from the normal rules of professional and market accountability that apply to everyone else.
The source uses some really potent language to describe tying this alleged hypocrisy status.
Oh, absolutely. It's harsh. They call them entitled ivory tire ass hats, champagne socialists.
Oh, okay.
The argument is that these are incredibly privileged people, disconnected from reality, who preach about fighting the man while essentially being the powerful establishment in their own industry.
So it's a critique of being out of touch, believing they're above consequences.
Completely. The source paints a picture of celebrities vomiting your opinions down into the masses from your high-up tower, expecting applause, but then screaming like a little baby the second any negative feedback or consequence comes remotely near them.
The idea is that they dish it out but can't take it.
That's the sentiment, yeah. That they see their platform not just as a privilege or a job, but as an absolute right, free from the scrutiny or consequences faced by, say, the normies the source mentioned earlier getting deplatformed.
Okay, so given this view, how does the source think this whole episode might play out? What's the prediction for Hollywood?
Interestingly, they predict this kind of high-profile activism might backfire on the celebrities themselves. That Hollywood, the corporate entity, is actually hastening their own demise in terms of this kind of outspoken.
How so? What would the studios do?
The speculation is that the studios, who are ultimately businesses concerned with profit and risk, are watching this unfold and taking note.
Taking note of who is causing trouble, who is potentially problematic.
Exactly. The thinking is studios might start preferring talent that is less politically volatile, less likely to drag the company into controversy or necessitate forming defense committees. They might start hiring actors who just show up and do the job without the political drama.
So ironically, this push for what they call free speech might lead studios to seek out less outspoken actors, maybe even people previously sidelined for being controversial.
That's the speculation. The source even mentions Tilly Norwood and pointedly Gina Carano as potential beneficiaries. If studios want reliable, less problematic performers, maybe they look again at people who, whatever their politics, just focus on the work.
And the source uses a movie reference to really nail down how they think studios view talent fundamentally.
Yeah, a great one from the Coen brothers film, Hail Caesar. There's that scene where the studio fixer, played by Josh Brolin, literally slaps some sense into a star who's getting caught up in political ideology.
And what is
the line that the source quotes is blunt. You work for the studio, you get out there, and you make the picture.
That really cuts through it, doesn't it? The source is saying these celebrities might see themselves as vital political voice, but to the studio, they're employees hired to produce product.
That's the argument, that the CFA signatories are perhaps mistaking their cultural influence for actual immunity from the economic realities of their industry. If they become too much trouble, the studio might just find someone else to make the picture.
It's just the whole thing from a constitutional battle to maybe just a labor dispute or a PR problem.
That's the source's ultimate reframing.
Yeah.
Is this really about the First Amendment, or is it about powerful, well-paid people trying to avoid accountability?
Okay, that's a very detailed look at an extremely pointed critique from our serial. Let's try to wrap this up, summarizing the key takeaways for you, the listener. #tags out.
So, summing up, we've really seen two major threads today. First, this significant relaunch of the Committee for the First Amendment.
Yeah, over 550 big Hollywood names joining forces, explicitly invoking the history of the McCarthy era.
Claiming they need to defend constitutional rights against a new wave of perceived government-led silencing.
And then second, we have this really intense counter-narrative from the source material we analyzed.
A critique focused laser-like on the timing and the motives behind this relaunch.
Accusing these celebrities of hypocrisy, basically saying they only care now because they feel threatened, after ignoring or even supporting consequences for others.
Yeah, drawing that sharp line between political opponents or ordinary plebs and the Hollywood elite.
And this really highlights that central tension we found in the sources, doesn't it? This question of power.
Absolutely. When very powerful people borrow the language and history of defending the powerless against state tyranny.
But use it, the source argues, to shield themselves from corporate decision or market feedback.
What does that tell us about how free speech is valued differently depending on who is speaking and who is facing the consequence? Does it mean something different for the elite versus the average person?
Which leaves us with that final provocative thought based directly on these.
The source material insists on separating free speech, the constitutional protection from government, from freedom of consequence to professional or market repercussions.
So the question you might ask yourself, is this current battle in Hollywood, as presented by these sources, really about the government infringing on constitution?
Or is it more of a high-stakes negotiation within the industry itself, a fight over professional accountability, who gets to set the standard, manage brand reputation, and ultimately who has to face the economic fallout for what they say in the modern market?
Is it constitution or is it consequence?
A crucial distinction to consider, especially when thinking about who gets to draw that line.
Definitely food for thought. That's all we have time for on this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
We'll catch you next time.